Hello and welcome back to the Sophos Naked Security Podcast. I'm Anna Brady and I'm here with Sophos experts Mark Stockley.
Hello.
Paul Ducklin.
Hello, folks.
And producer Alice.
Hello again.
How are you all?
Very well.
Very excellent.
I'm dying inside my sweat lodge and I've only been in it for about 15 seconds. So if you hear lots of uncontrollable fidgeting and scratching and perhaps gasping for breath and then maybe a thudding noise, perhaps the noise of blankets being dragged over hard surfaces, alarmed children, then don't worry about it.
Don't do much.
It's just the usual pillow fort shenanigans.
Does the exceptionally long beard make you hotter?
Well, I think that's for others to decide, Anna. What do you think?
I don't know. I can't see you, Mark. Otherwise, I'd be sure to give you an opinion.
Do you mean warmer?
Yes, that is what I meant.
Or do you mean more attractive?
Well, I mean, I'm happy for you to discuss either. But I did mean warmer.
Actually, it's a moot point because the beard has gone.
Has it?
What?
Well, no,
I
I say gone. I mean, you know me. I mean, I just returned to normal, like minimal beard length.
Oh, okay. You basically did a tiny bit of
grooming. The shops reopened and you were in there for the hedge trimmer, were you?
I already had a hedge trimmer, but I was growing the beard because why the hell not? And I posted that photo of me holding a biro in the beard, and then I looked at it the following day, and I was mildly disgusted with myself.
Oh, really?
You echoed the thoughts of the Naked Security followers.
I thought you'd let yourself go a bit, did you?
The answer was it didn't make you hotter.
Yeah. Moving
Do you have
on.
a fly swatter in your pillow fort, like in case a bee or a wasp or something gets in there?
If a bee or a wasp gets in here, only one of us is getting out alive. There isn't much room for a bee or a wasp.
Okay, that's a sensible precaution.
Shall we talk about the stories? Duck's going to be talking about some Microsoft patches you'll want to apply. Mark's going to tell us whether we need to worry about fan vibrations, and I'll be talking about incentives to use 2FA. Before all that, here's a quick roundup of a few other stories from the last week or so. The people behind Shade Ransomware have apparently posted all 750,000 decryption keys on GitHub. They also posted a message that said, "We are the team which created a Trojan encryptor mostly known as Shade, Trolldash or Encoded.a58. In fact, we stopped its distribution at the end of 2019. Now we made a decision to put the last point in this story and to publish all the decryption keys we have." They go on to apologise to their victims and say they hope the keys will help them recover their data. Of course, we've seen this before with the people behind GandCrab after they posted a retirement notice online, but now it's looking like they're the people behind Sodoniki. So they may not be gone forever. Thanks. So I guess we'll just watch this space.
Am I allowed to swear on the podcast?
No, but we can bleep it. Can we bleep it?
Okay. Well, they could off, frankly.
Well, I was thinking, what's the point?
I'm done with these apologies. I mean, I'm great. I'm glad that they have posted the decryption keys
4 months later
to unpick some small vestige of the giant problem that they created. But they created a giant problem, and I hope that they are discovered and locked up for a very long time. Screw them.
Well, that's the thing with it. So they published the keys, but as Duck said, that's 4 months since they say they stopped it. And presumably, if you get caught by ransomware, you need your files back before 4 months. So you've either paid the ransomware or you found backups. I mean, who's it helping, really? Not that many people.
Yeah, because there's a school of thought that says, oh, well, back up your encrypted files, all of them, all across your network, just in case the keys come out later.
Oh, right. Okay.
And, it's easy to say, but that's just sort of almost adding insult to injury, isn't it?
I've got a suggestion. If you want to apologise, give all the money back that you extorted and then march yourself into a police station.
It's good to see
and
that you're...
And then we'll have an apology fitting the crime.
Very true. Okay, I'll continue. Microsoft's patched a flaw in Teams which could have allowed criminals to launch an attack on multiple accounts by sending one victim a malicious GIF. The researchers who found the flaw created a proof of concept Donald Duck evil.gif image, and when the GIF was opened, it could have allowed them to access a user's chats, control their account, and forward the same message to anyone in that group, and therefore repeat the process. The researchers said that without quick intervention, this could have allowed an attack to compromise large numbers of big company accounts and groups. But luckily, Microsoft did intervene quickly, and the flaw has been patched. So go get your updates.
I see you nailed your colours to the mast there, Anna. With GIF versus GIF.
Oh, I know. I can't do it.
I can never remember which is the original and which is the right one.
It's so GIF, I think, but I'm a rebel.
GIF is the right one, and GIF is the one that you used to say.
Because it stands for the word graphics rather than graphics.
Also, GIF just makes me think of the cleaning product.
Yeah.
Yes.
which is now SIF. Not endorsing that. I don't
So
know.
now that we've got this bug in Teams, I trust there's going to be a sort of giant breathless overreaction on Twitter for several weeks about why you shouldn't be using Teams and Microsoft is evil.
I see. Because of the
That's
Zoom
what
thing.
we do these days, isn't it? If there's a problem with your video conferencing or chatting.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like this rotating carousel of video conferencing solutions. Have about 12 lined up, like on a clock, and every time the hour hand moves along one, you switch to the next one.
Turns out when your applications are subjected to an order of magnitude more scrutiny, more stuff turns up. Go figure.
In a sort of perfect storm full of just the right words, phishers are taking advantage of remote working and people worrying about their jobs. We saw a phish this week which invites you to join a Zoom meeting with HR. The message says, your presence is crucial to this meeting. So I'm thinking if you're busy and you're in a panic about being invited to a meeting with HR, you can see how this might be a phish that you'd fall for. If you click on the link, it takes you to a fake login page, which you shouldn't normally see given that you don't need to log in to just attend a Zoom meeting. So hopefully that's enough to stop people in their tracks. But anyway, this might be one to warn your colleagues about. So we'll stick a link in the show notes to the article that Duck wrote, which includes screenshots that you can share. So
I think in the current climate, just avoid meetings with HR. It's probably the safest things to do.
That's fantastic advice, Mark.
Just there's no good can come of a meeting with HR right now. Frankly,
nope, I don't want to talk to you.
Well, the wording in this one is actually quite cunning because it sort of implies that everyone's getting together and there's going to be a bit of a bun fight about who gets the chop and who doesn't. So the implication is obviously if you don't show up, you might not be able to fight your corner and you might, so there's the wording is
like
very simple.
The companies are turning into The Apprentice and everybody has to be in the same meeting and just throw everyone else under the bus.
That would be quite
Sorry,
fun.
guys, there's only 3 jobs for the 20 of you. Who deserves to get the chop? I would go to that meeting.
Exactly, it'd be great. Duck, you're going to tell us about a flaw in a non-Microsoft product that affects Microsoft products.
Yes. Oh, right now, you mean?
If you could.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Thanks. We're on this podcast.
Yeah.
If you could talk, that'd be great.
No, I was kind of, I'd got lost in that Zoom HR scam because it's just a nasty piece of work. Yes, this is an interesting reminder that bugs and bug fixes aren't necessarily just one bug, one app, one fix, one patch, but they may affect the whole ecosystem. So the story is that Microsoft issued a security advisory with the catchy name of ADV 200004, the fourth one of the... Actually, I don't know what that number is. I'm about to say the fourth one of the year 2000, but that would be absurd.
So you don't have to worry about that one because it doesn't have a fancy name like Bloodlust or.
Well,
Can I just say I don't mind a fancy bug name.
What?
Well, this one, it does have a meaningful name, but it's not exactly catchy. Like if they just called it Film Hack or something, everyone would have remembered it. But it's availability of updates for Microsoft software utilizing the Autodesk FBX library, which is quite a mouthful. And if you were to glance at that, you might think, hey, Autodesk, they're known for AutoCAD, the product AutoCAD famously, and for a whole load of other software relating to 3D video and games creation and stuff. So the point is, if you're a Microsoft Office user, then you might think, you know what, I don't use any Autodesk products. I've never heard of FBX files. I hadn't. It turns out it's short for Film Box. So you might be inclined to go, oh, clearly that doesn't apply to me. But it turns out that the Office 2019, let me just double check that. It turns out that Office 2019 and Office 365 Pro Plus, those are the 2 main versions affected here, actually incorporate some Autodesk code. And because Autodesk, well, actually a lot of people on Naked Security said, why would you have support in Office for these Film Box files? Because they're mainly to do with motion capture and stuff. But yet they are a way of container files for things that mix together stuff that might come from digital content creators somewhere else in your company. So we are actually getting used to the idea that if you use a product like Office or maybe an open source equivalent, that no matter what file format somebody sends you can still import it and adapt it for your presentation if you need. So you want to be able to load movies and audio and all of this stuff. So it's not that unnatural that you might want, hey, it would be great to be able to add, 360-degree rotating 3D models as well.
I don't know about you, but I often add 3D rotating models to the letters I write in Word.
I put them in my PowerPoint, Mark.
Actually, yes, you probably do, yeah.
Yeah, I think you think broader than Word, right? There's, in the business context, particularly these days when everything's online, and you may rely on visuals in, say, a PowerPoint presentation. So although it sounds far-fetched, as people commenters said on the Naked Security article, golly, when I've been typing in my latest invoice to send off to a customer, I've definitely wanted motion capture. But nevertheless, it's a feature, it's in the product, it supports these files. And unfortunately, it meant that Microsoft inherited from Autodesk updates needed in Autodesk's Security Advisory ADSK-SA-2000-0002 vulnerabilities in the Autodesk FBX software development kit. Another sea of words. Basically, from the fact that the CVE numbers, there are several of them, I won't list them now. All these came out in sequence. It sort of looks as though Autodesk did some kind of code review or a bug finding hunt, and they came up with a whole series of stuff, cleaned up their code, fixed some problems that could perhaps have led to things like remote code execution or code crashes, and published update to their products, which of course includes updates to their software development kit, which their own products use, and it turns out other products, notably including Microsoft Office use. So here you have a situation for a file format you may never have heard of, you might not need, that somehow affects somebody else's products, but also means you need an update for Office. And to make it even more interesting, it also turns out that there are actually two components built into Windows 10. They're quite cool programs, actually. Paint 3D, which is, if you want to have 3D fun instead of 2D fun, it's an upgrade, an update to old Microsoft Paint, and a program called 3D Viewer. Those are actually part of Windows 10, and in those you can open these FBX files. For example, if you want to open a 3D model, digital model, or something like that. And so, in fact, you need to patch those, which of course means getting a Windows 10 update. And because this is a so-called out-of-band patch, which didn't come in Patch Tuesday, I guess Microsoft, quite rightly, and did the decent thing and said to people, hey, this is out there, make sure you've got it. So it's a simple fix, but it's something that, if you've got in the habit of, patching on Windows means the second Tuesday of every month, I go and check for updates and then I stand down from red alert. You need to be a little bit more continuously vigilant, if you like, these days, just in case something like this should happen.
This just makes me wonder what else you can open with Microsoft Office. Like, where is the next attack going to come from? What are we going to discover next week?
What do you reckon, Mark?
Seems like a good use case for plugins. I think we're at the point. I always maintain that Microsoft Office was feature complete in about 1996, and everything since then has just been
when the macro programming language matured into Visual Basic for applications. You mean?
Also, I don't want to be funny, Mark, but if you can do painting in 3D, that's clearly evolved since 1996.
Yeah, I guess. Anna's got a point, Mark. Do you want your programs to be like Paint was in 1992, or do you want them to be a bit cooler? Because it is quite amazing. I think I actually
do.
I had a lot of fun with Paint in 1992.
So did I.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in 1992, but I had a lot of fun with Paint.
It was good, wasn't it? And clip art.
You're a precocious child, I can tell.
And Clippy, even.
My friend used to send me letters that he had, cards that he'd made in Paint.
Dear,
and he
where's
used to
this
draw
going?
And they were drawings of. No, they were sweet drawings. It was when Wallace and Gromit were big, so there's Wallace and Gromit. Yes.
Before DMs.
Oh no.
That's the way he slid into my DMs. You've made it weird now, and I was just telling you a nice story, but fine, let's just move on. Mark,
Oh, is it me?
What are you talking about?
Hang on, I have to cave a hole in my pillow fort so that I can see.
Do you know what? We go through the running order of the podcast before we start the podcast, yet both of you haven't been ready.
Yeah, whatever.
So I suggest that next episode, just listen a bit more.
Well, if we go first next time, then that will reduce our choices to one of two. So if we both toss coins, we've got a 1 in 4 chance of coming out right.
Yeah, so in a way, Duck's saying it's your fault.
Yeah, don't blame the victim. Mark, what are you talking about this week?
I'm talking about good vibrations. Thanks to
the Beach Boys.
Keeping that
here.
Oh, God. Yep, carry on.
Yeah, go on, Duck. Go on.
You might need to explain what the Beach Boys is.
I'm waiting for you to sing. There's no way you're not going to sing. You're not getting out of here without singing now.
I told you I don't listen to music with vocals anymore. It's instrumental.
And that's how you didn't know that there was a song called Good Vibrations.
It's because I studied the sheet music.
I've heard you break into song on a number of occasions.
Yeah,
but that doesn't imply that I listen to...
Yes, but as long as you've listened to music in the last however many... I don't think the Beach Boys are new, Doug. They've been around a while. I mean, I think they were before me.
They were around before you went instrumental only.
They were.
It's not working. Is it?
Mark, are you going to sing? Anyone want to sing?
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay.
And if you heard me sing, you'd agree.
Good vibrations.
There you go. He couldn't resist.
Yeah.
Now you know why it wasn't funny,
I think we should just end my story there.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Yeah. So I'm going to be talking about good vibrations thanks to something called AirViber. What is it? Well, it isn't a way to amuse yourself if you're on your own during lockdown. It's a seismic data exfiltration technique for getting data off air-gapped computers, of course. And that's what you should tell anyone who walks in on you when you're air vibing. The new technique comes to us via Ben Gurion University of the Negev, which will come as no surprise if you're into this stuff, because the researchers there have basically made a name for themselves, or made a name for the university in the field of eye-catching data exfiltration techniques. And they all start with the same premise, which is that you've got an air-gapped computer, which is a computer that's not connected to a network, and somehow you've managed to get some malware onto that computer. The malware's found some data, and now it wants to get the data off the air-gapped computer, which isn't connected to a network, and it wants to get the data onto your computer. So how could you do that? And for years and years, that university has been producing research explaining or demonstrating different ways that you might do that, using some really interesting techniques like taking over the blinky lights on the front of your computer. So they did a fantastic video where they flew some drones up to the windows of an office building, and then they blinked a message to the drone using the little blinky green lights on the front of a server. I think Duck's blinking a message to us. Are you exfiltrating some data?
Yeah, it's considerably faster than their systems are able to do.
Yes, it's not quick. I think it's more a question of
per minute.
It's possible rather than quick. So they did the drone video. They've also done the blinky lights on your keyboard. They've done the blade pass frequency of your computer fans and the brightness of your screen, so varying the brightness of your screen to send a message. And they've also done research using the invisible to the human eye infrared LEDs on security cameras. Well, AirViber is here now, and that tackles the same question, but instead of using light or heat or sound or electromagnetic waves, it uses vibrations, and it works like this. Instead of using a light, heat, sound or electromagnetic waves, I nearly managed to say electromagnetic then, it uses vibrations, and it works like this. Most computers have a fan, and the fan unintentionally vibrates the computer it's in, and in turn the vibrating computer vibrates the surface it's on. Now, the computer controls the fan speed, and thus the computer also controls the vibrations. So if you can get some malware onto the computer, then your malware can control the computer, which controls the fan, which vibrates the computer, which vibrates the desk. And so your malware now controls a vibrating desk. And we're halfway there.
Or upturned washing basket, which is what I'm currently using in my pillow fort to balance my computer on.
Are you suggesting that as a sort of countermeasure to AirViber?
No, I'm suggesting it would possibly work on that too.
Your
can't be too careful.
Upturned washing basket is vibrating in tune with your computer.
Absolutely.
So we've got a vibrating desk. You've got malware that's basically controlling a vibrating desk. All you've got to do now is put a seismometer on the desk next to the vibrating computer, and you can read its vibrations.
I can see.
Right? Now, it's not easy, but it is easier than you might think. And that's because it so happens that lots of us are walking around with phones that include accelerometers, and a phone with an accelerometer can be used to read vibrations as a kind of seismometer. And what's more, the accelerometer data can be accessed by apps on the phone without asking the user for permissions. And in fact, the accelerometer is even accessible via JavaScript without asking the user for permission, which means you could conceivably create a website and the website could read the vibrations off the phone, although you would have to get the person to visit the website. So in the end, all we have to do is put some malware on the computer that can control the fan and some malware on the phone of someone who works near the computer, and then have that person put the phone down on the desk that's vibrating because of the computer. And then the phone can read the vibrations and then presumably store the data. And then somehow you take it off the phone, get the phone to send it to someone else, or steal the phone from the person at the end of the day. Simple.
Isn't it easier to just give them $50 and say, since they're letting you take your phone into the secure area, why don't you snap a screenshot or three while you're in there and bring them out on the Lady Gaga CD?
Also, infinitely harder in coronavirus times, surely, because no one's moving anywhere, so everyone's at their home.
Yeah, perhaps the timing on this one was, obviously they did the research, perhaps not knowing that nobody would ever be able to meet up with anybody ever again.
It doesn't sound like something I'm going to be too worried about.
I think it's an interesting reminder that if you have a secure area and you let people take phones in, then just saying, well, you have to leave your phone on the desk and I don't want to see you touching it, which would obviously, you imagine if there's some kind of security guard or surveillance in the secure area, if you lifted up your phone to take a photo of the screen, it would kind of stand out, obviously. I guess this is a warning that phones have sensors that can determine the data from their surroundings, even when they're in the case closed and just sitting on your desk. So the moral of the story is if you have a truly secure area, do what a military establishment might do and have little lock boxes outside where people have to leave their phones behind. Lock them up. Each party takes a key, like in a hotel safe deposit box, and then you get it back later. That way, if you don't have the phone, then all of this is moot.
I think what you have to do with this research is firstly, I think it's great. It's amusing and eye-catching, and I'm sure it does a great job for them in terms of driving publicity and getting people to study at the university. But if you imagine, like most of the time, what we're talking about is people who want to make money by extorting you, putting ransomware on your computer or logging your keystrokes or something like that. And so we're talking about how do you defend against those people? And you look at stuff like this and they're basically saying, look what's possible. Now, when I see something like this, I think, okay, this is a bunch of students doing this. Now, imagine that what you're trying to do is find out what the president of the United States is talking about with his close confidants. So he's got a thing called he's got a thing called a skiff, which is a sort of secure communications tent that goes with him everywhere. So if he's in an insecure environment, he can effectively create a secure environment in which to have conversations and calls and things like that.
Donald Trump thinks it's an actual tent.
Well, regardless of who's president, they get given this skiff, whether they camp in it or use it for communications. And so if you imagine that that's the person that you're trying to bug, you're already mentally adjusting to the idea, you're going to have to do something quite extraordinary. I expect, you're not going to be able to use your usual techniques. And if you're the person trying to defend the skiff, you have to think, well, what might somebody do? What might somebody with enormous resources be able to do in order to bug me and find out what I'm doing? So this is what a university can do with a bit of off-the-wall thinking. Now imagine that they've got millions and millions of dollars to spend on perfecting this technique. And then I think it's reasonable to say, all right, what does a very, very secure environment need to be secure against? What are the off-the-wall one-off techniques that we do? You don't want to discover, the bug embedded in the foundations or the walls 30 years after it was put in there. You want to never have that problem in the first place. So I will give you some suggestions that came with the research paper. So the first suggestion was actually just having some space around your computer, having computers in secure zones, because you actually have to get the phone quite close to the computer in order for this to work. So just making sure that there's a zone around your computer in which you're not allowed to put things is a good start. The other things that they mention in the research paper is you could actually fit an accelerometer to the computer itself to see if the computer is making weird vibrations. You could try and detect if software is accessing the fan, because under normal operations, there isn't really any user-land software that should be doing anything with the fan. So that's a big red flag. And then the last thing, which I thought was the most interesting, because there's always a possibility with software that it's going to miss something, was that you could actually jam the signal. So you could make it so that the computer itself is randomly changing the speed of the fan. So that
wouldn't get annoying quickly at all, would it?
I mean, that does sound like my computer anyway.
Actually, if you just had a flash game on the computer playing in the background.
I have to open too many tabs in my Firefox.
The other thing I think you could do that I don't think they mentioned, which would be quite good, is if you are allowed to take your phone into the secure area and you're worried, then you could just basically put a music player on your phone, or find the one that's already there and just play some music, like, for example, Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys, and leave your phone on the desk. And that will certainly, I would imagine, dampen out any chance that the accelerometer has of getting the vibrations or the sound from the fan.
Presumably rubber desks or upturned washing baskets would work as well.
Let's try it.
Or, you could just put a foam pad under the computer. Or you could get a laptop that doesn't have a fan.
Yeah. Or put it on a pillow.
Imagine going to all that effort of producing that $1 million ransomware and putting it on the computer and then finding out there isn't a fan.
I presume you do. I mean,
and also the malware would have no way. It would have no way of telling anyone it was on the computer, and the computer didn't have a fan.
And then you realise, oh darn! I thought they were using Android. They've all got iPhones. Developed the wrong app. Tarnation.
I'm presuming this is going to be quite targeted, though. It's not like.
I think there is something interesting, though, that comes out of this, and that is that it's a good way of reminding the rest of us that maybe access to system-collected data that used to seem uncontroversial, like the accelerometer, maybe isn't such a good idea, because there are some privacy implications after all. I think we've already seen
that a few times, haven't we?
Yeah, there was one where that somebody figured out they could probably, from your accelerometer, work out where they knew you're on a particular metro rail line, subway rail line, they could work out which one you're on from the sort of the way the train rattled, because between each station the track had different patterns that they could measure out. So I guess the same thing, with JavaScript used to allow really precise system timing, because that was seen as really, really necessary for games. But it turns out that could let you sneak stuff out of the CPU using sort of, various attacks, like I nearly said with there, and the rest. And so the response was, well, maybe games don't need nanosecond accuracy after all. And maybe that's the case here. Maybe, the accelerometer, because it does give away information about your surroundings, maybe that is worth protecting against apps by default on privacy grounds alone.
So you think that access to the accelerometer ought to be part of the application permissions when you say, yes, it's okay for this app to access this stuff?
I don't know. Well, that's a $64,000 question, isn't it? Because, of course, the more options you get, the more complicated it gets. And lots of apps do make reasonable use of the accelerometer. If you've got an app that wants to see how fast you're going, or do GPS stuff, or how you're turning, or have a compass and stuff like that. So, yeah, I guess we'd end up with having to go through about a week of a questionnaire before deciding which permissions we wanted to give to every app. But it could be warning,
I feel like it's a little bit more clear cut with browsers. So I think there's all sorts of guff in browsers that doesn't need to be in there now. We talk about Office being feature complete in '96. I think browsers were feature complete in about 2005, and since then there's so many APIs now for so many different features and access to batteries and ridiculously sensitive system timing and accelerometers and things like this, and the number of websites that actually make sensible use of those things is so small. I'm not quite sure why the rest of us, a bit like these FBX files, why does my Office application need to be able to open a 3D rotating map when some vanishingly tiny percentage of people really need that feature? Why isn't that something I can switch on with a plugin or something like that if I really need it? Because almost nobody needs it. Same with macros. I could go on. Somebody else should speak now. Okay.
So I'm going to talk today about multi-factor authentication, which I'm sure you're very excited about, but stay with me. So Epic Games, for a year or two, has been giving away free games on its Epic Games store, which is great. I mean, I'm not a gamer, but I can imagine that free games are good. Free stuff's always good. But this week, Epic announced that you're going to have 2FA enabled in order to benefit from these free games. So Gamers got a notification to let them know that between the 28th of April and 21st of May, I find it weird it's got an end date, but anyway, Epic will be periodically requiring that people enable 2FA to claim the free games. The notification said, "We understand that this is a minor inconvenience for some, but we want to provide the best possible solutions to protect your Epic account." And it isn't the first time that Epic has done something like this. They previously incentivized people to enable 2FA by giving away an emote dance move in Fortnite, which means nothing to me because I don't play Fortnite, but it sounds good. Have I said I'm not a gamer? And so I know other companies... I think
you just have to be a 9-year-old to understand that, not gamer.
Yeah. I know other companies incentivise too. MailChimp offers a 10% discount for a few months if you set up 2FA, and I'm sure there are plenty of others. Which strikes me that this is a good idea, right? You say, great, Mark, we clearly need to do something, and there are enough credential stuffing attacks for us to know that people aren't getting the password message. So what do you guys think? Is it a good idea to incentivize people?
I think this is fantastic. It's about damn time. I don't understand with 2FA. If you just let people who want to sign up for 2FA, then so far in the history of 2FA, it seems like quite a small percentage of people will sign up. And you have to think, well, those are probably the people who are taking the best care of themselves anyway. They're probably the people with really strong passwords. Because if you understand what 2FA is and why it's worth going through that.
Yeah.
The increased difficulty of switching it on versus not switching it on. So absolutely, companies have got to get with the program and start making it mandatory. So, that's what I would go mandatory. I think if you're Facebook and you've got 2 billion users, you can probably start telling people that people are invested in your platform and they're not leaving to go to other places in any kind of hurry. There's no Facebook killer out there. You can start saying to people, right, we're going to switch on 2FA. You've got to use it.
Yeah.
And I think this is fantastic. This is another way of doing it.
Well, I was thinking it's a better alternative. We were talking I don't know if it's last week or the week before, about password managers and teaching your friends and family. And if you could get them to switch on 2FA, or if they were forced to switch on 2FA, that is a slightly friendlier security step, I think, than password managers, because people are already forced to do it with some things, like you're forced to do it with your bank. So everybody that does stuff online, they're used to it in some form, whereas password managers is another step. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Doug, what do you reckon?
I think part of the reaction that people have to 2FA is the fact that it doesn't actually make you completely secure. It doesn't sort out the problems of authentication and online fraud. It just makes things a tiny bit less convenient for you, but very much more inconvenient for the crooks. So it's just a way of buying more than you'd get, in my opinion, than you would by adding a couple of random characters to your password. And therefore, I'm all in favor of it. But because people hear that message, you often hear this argument that says, oh, well, the security industry, all you techies, you just jump on this bandwagon. You're just saying use 2FA because it's brilliant, but you haven't really thought it through. It doesn't solve all the problems. It's not perfect. Therefore, I'm not going to use it, which seems a little bit of a defeatist attitude.
I think people don't use it because they can't be bothered. I think, or they just don't. Why would they? If people haven't had any kind of cyber attack happen to them, or they haven't had their data stolen, or they don't realize they've had their data stolen, like they haven't seen proof of something that's actually damaged them, then they just think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. And, oh, I just really want to access my Facebook quickly and I can't really remember, so I'm going to set it to Rover25. So it's those. I don't think they're thinking, oh, it's not completely foolproof, so I'm not going to do it. I think they just think, they don't even think about it.
I agree with you completely.
People use that as a kind of excuse that they go, well, you guys are saying I have to do this because it's so brilliant, but I look at all these horror stories about people who did use it and it still didn't protect them. So that's as good a reason as any.
Yeah, I don't think
I don't think that's right at all. I think the vast majority of people out there don't have
people actually say in their comments on Naked Security.
Yeah, but they're reading Naked Security. They're reading Naked Security. The vast majority of people out there aren't reading Naked Security, and I don't think they have any opinion about 2FA at all because they don't know it even exists or what it is. If you should see that, obviously, since the coronavirus happened, the number of services that have suddenly had to go digital has increased, and so there are people sending us passwords, and their group passwords, it might be from a school and they're all appalling. They are, the password is like Jeff21 and it's for 30 people and we're going to use it for a month. The awareness amongst people who don't have to worry about this stuff is non-existent, even on basic password security or not having, or not sharing accounts and things like this. We're still right at the bottom of that hill. So when you talk to those people about 2FA, they don't even know why they need a strong password. And I'm not blaming them. That's not their fault. No. We need to do a better job of not giving them the option of having to. We need to not give them the option to make poor choices. Basically.
Yeah, and they're probably with banking and stuff, they're probably not even thinking that it's called 2FA. It's just a way that you get onto your online bank.
Why would you care what it's called? It's just I'm online banking and it's online. A bank. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Mark, what would incentivize you then to use 2FA? What would be your incentive that you'd need?
Oh, money.
Alice, what would you set up 2FA for?
Chocolate.
Yeah, I was thinking chocolate.
Or clothes vouchers.
Well, there's no point in doing that.
Well, no.
Maybe for the future.
It makes me long for a better time,
Oh, Dark, what would you do it for?
It's a tricky question because I guess when it comes to online banking, it's pretty obvious what you're protecting.
For a T-shirt.
Well, I'd do it for money. Give me money. Give me money and I'll do it. I say no incentives, though. Just force people to do it. Come on. It's time. Let's all take the jump together.
I'd do it for a coronavirus-free day. That'd be quite nice.
Oh, that's so poignant.
And I didn't even think about it. It just came off the top of my head. That's what I really need. It's my inner...
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
although I'd be a bit worried about a company that could give that to you.
Dark, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me at DuckBlog on Twitter and at pducklin on Instagram.
And on TikTok?
Well, watch this space like you were last week.
I know, it's keeping me... There's only so long that we'll be interested for, Doug. Mark, where are you on TikTok?
On TikTok, I'm nowhere to be seen, but you can find me on Instagram at Internet of Hens.
Alice, who do you reckon...
the TikTok craze is going to be over by the time that Duck's on it. He's only just got on Vine.
Who do you reckon would be the hardest to get on TikTok, Mark or Duck?
I think Mark, because Duck would have an audience on there. Mark, I'm sorry, but you wouldn't.
Mark would be too serious. Whereas
Mark
Duck
would try and give cybersecurity advice, whereas I think Duck would do the dance, where you have to point at things and then you write little words and it could be like 2-factor authentication. And he'd incorporate it into a dance, whereas I think Mark would just give it as straight advice.
That's true. Mark, it's not your platform, Mark.
It's not your platform, Mark.
Alice, where are you?
I'm on Twitter as Ali Rouge. Follow along.
I'm at Anna Brading on Twitter, and we are at Naked Security. We've been lucky enough to be nominated for Best Podcast and other awards for Naked Security at the European Security Blogger Awards. So we'll put a little link in the show notes, and if you would like to vote for us, please do. You can also rate and review our podcast as well. There's a few begging things for you there. Hit us up at nakedsecurity.sophos.com for all the latest security news. And until next time, stay secure.
Stay secure.